Hi there. Welcome to your Love Talk. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode today. If you have not yet subscribed to this podcast, please do so now. Your support is so greatly appreciated. So today, I want to welcome Gregory Roberts, a serial tech startup founder, to this episode. He was frustrated with his life and unfortunately turned to robbing banks to emotionally escape. In 2018, he served 6 years in prison and experienced a spiritual rebirth while he was incarcerated. Now he dedicates his life to serving humanity and building a better future for children. With his memoir and podcast, Pirate Soldier King, he shares his journey of spiritual reconciliation, offering inspiration through the wisdom he has gained. Please listen to Gregory's story. Hi, Gregory. Welcome to your Love Talk.
Thank you, Beverly. I'm very happy to be here.
That's amazing to have you here. So, Gregory, again, we were on the seven-figure podcast training, and you had an interesting story as you were talking, and I thought I want Gregory on this podcast because it's different than what most people have gone through. But I would love for you to share a little bit about yourself first, and before we could jump into your story. So just tell the audience about who you are.
Okay. My name is Gregory Roberts. I'm a proud father of 2 grown adult children. That's kind of the pride and joy of my life.
Mm-hmm.
I spent the majority of my career founding technology startups and growing them, and in many cases selling them, including a brief stint in Silicon Valley.
Mm-hmm.
I went through some pretty hard times in the late 2000s, mid 2010s. Got divorced. My mother died. I mean, it's a whole, one of those midlife crisis things amplified.
Yeah.
And it was also a very difficult financial environment. I had a startup, and I just kind of lost my mind. And to fund the startup, I robbed banks.
Wow. So
Yeah.
let's take a pause there.
Yes.
That's a lot. So you're saying that, you went through a difficult season in your life, including a divorce, including the death of your mom.
Yeah.
And during that time, then you were doing your business, but then you were struggling. So financially you were struggling. So you thought, to keep going, it was your option that you chose at that time was to rob banks to fund it.
Yeah, I wasn't in a desperate financial situation.
Okay.
And I was used to raising significant funds for companies easily. Well, not easily, but with some work. Okay. And it was just a dry environment for that. So it was really more to start my company. That was the rationale that I told myself. We tell ourselves a lot of stories in order to do things that that are part of our life. So that was my rationalization, I'd say. Okay. There was another part of me that I think just really wanted to have that adventure and even to suffer the consequences. We'll get into that a little later, but there was absolutely something in prison that I needed to have in my life and needed to find.
Okay. So let's try to understand or sort of unpack your thought process, right? So you decided that, okay, you know what, I'm going to go this route. But what made you decide that that's the route you're going to go to be able to fund it, even though it's not legal to do that?
I was angry. I think if I was honest, I'd say I was angry at the world, and I aimed my anger at banks. I felt like I had many personal experiences with banks, with both credit cards and one time in particular, I walked into a bank. I had a significant amount of cash in my account, and I tried to cash a check, and they said, "Oh, you can order the money, and we'll have the cash for you in 3 days." Uh-huh. And I was like, "I know the money is in." You're telling me this bank doesn't have $10,000 sitting there in one drawer? So, and just the ridiculousness of that situation, like I needed the cash that day to purchase a vehicle, or something like that. And just the inanity of it and the power of the banks over the people. And also just this whole idea of like, I had been in significant debt. And instead of declaring bankruptcy, I spent, I'd say like 5 years working really, really hard and taking, eating inexpensive food and taking every last dollar and paying off that debt and interest.
Yeah.
And I just kind of realized at the end of it what a hustle it was. Like 29% interest on credit cards is almost crushing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And some people never get out of it. And I swore to myself after that I'd never be in debt again. So just, I had a lot of anger in general about the banks, the banking system, and how that, the more I looked at it, the more angry I got, because it seemed like just the rich pushing down the poor as hard as they could all the time.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. So let me understand then just the beginning of how it started in terms of, did you go home and say, okay, you know what, I'm going to make a plan in place to rob a bank. So tell me the thought process that got you there the first time. I don't know how many times you robbed a bank, but yeah, what got you there the first time?
I think what got me there the first time for real was just a psychological desperation and a need to break out of my life. I think that's the deep truth of it.
Yeah.
I lived in the suburbs, had my 2.5 children and my 2 cars and a big screen TV and a business, and it was a very plain life.
It's routine.
Yeah, it was kind of like it wasn't what I imagined I imagined like being an adventurer as a child. And when I looked at it, when we had the kids, I was like, let's move to India and like have a castle and and travel the world. And my wife at the time, mother of my children, was like, nope, we're living close to the parents and we're going to be in a cul-de-sac. We're going to have
the typical American dream
house. Yeah. You wanted the program.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question before you even go on to explaining what happened for the bank robbery. But did you grow up with a sense of adventure all the time, or did you feel like it was just routine and you wanted the sense of adventure and just didn't get it?
Oh no, I grew up with a sense of adventure. My parents didn't have a whole lot of money, so instead of like going on vacations to Cancun or Italy or wherever people go, we just went backpacking. So we just went into the woods and I had a great time. It was just me and my brother, so it was a very like masculine thing. And we just went to the woods and we loved it. We just like had our knives and we carved things out of wood and made fires and cooked food over open fires and fished. It was just and we didn't have much supervision at all. We just ran. Played.
Yeah. So you had the sense of freedom then to be able just to explore and do what it is that you wanted to do.
Yes. And I've kind of maintained that my whole life. Yeah.
Okay. So then you end up marrying someone that was a little bit less adventurous, I would say. Is that what happened?
I wouldn't go so far as to say less adventurous. I would say adventurous in a different way. Yeah. Our priest that married us basically said that we were total polar opposites. And if we could make that bridge work, then it would be great. Otherwise, it would be shattered in disaster. So we made it work for 10 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's take it now back to your plans now. You said, okay, I'm going to rob a bank. I guess you felt that you knew that you could get in trouble, but it was like, I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. So let's understand understand the thought process and how you actually did it.
It was kind of like building up pressure in me it was just building up pressure in me. It was like an idea for like 6 years.
Okay.
And it started out as just some like whimsical idea.
Mm-hmm.
And the more I thought about it, and the more I watched movies and talk to people who had experienced it, experienced robberies from the teller side or the customer side, who just randomly walked into my life, and said, "Oh my God, I was just, at a bank and it got robbed." And I was like, "Oh, tell me all the details."
Got it. Mm-hmm.
So, I kind of built this structure in my head about how it might go down and how I might be able to do it. I was adamant that in no way, shape, or form would I use a gun, because at the time I was not exactly comfortable with guns, and I was a very peaceful person, quite honestly.
Okay. You're not the typical bank robber, I guess, right?
Not at all. Yeah.
People don't expect.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And so I eventually picked the place and kind of made a plan. I made an escape plan, got my costume together, my change of clothes, my change of vehicles, all the things you see in movies and read about, and picked a day and a time, and and I did it. And it felt like a great release, like a psychological release.
Okay.
After it was complete. Yeah. And I felt like, okay, I did that, checking it off the list. I'm done. I don't ever have to, because it was also very stressful.
I'm sure it was.
It kind of goes against all programming that you've ever been raised with. I mean, I was raised with good morals.
Right. I figured you were.
Yeah. I mean, if I could tell a quick story of my childhood.
Yeah.
Like I was at the grocery store with my mother. I was like 5 years old, and I don't know what happened. I was like, "Mom, I want this bubble gum," and she was like, "No, put it back on the rack." And I put it in my pocket, and I didn't even know. Like, I got home and I reached in my pocket, and I was like, "Oh, I got the bubble gum." And so it was like, I don't know, it was like 8:30 at night. It was like close to my bedtime. So I took a piece of gum and started chewing it. My mom came to tuck me in and give me my glass of water, and she goes, "What's in your mouth?" And I was like, and she goes, "Open your mouth." And I'm like, no. I open my mouth. She goes, "That's gum. Where'd you get that gum?" I was like, "From the grocery store."
Oh, wow.
And she marched me in my pajamas to the grocery store with my little change purse and made me pay for the bubble gum at like 9:30 at night.
Wow.
So I was raised with, I'd say, pretty, maybe she knew.
Well, normally I always say whatever you do in the dark comes out in the light. At some point, if someone's going to find out.
Thanks.
It doesn't happen right away, but eventually it comes out.
Yeah.
Okay. So you've got good morals. You robbed the bank for the first time. It's a check off for you, but then there's a lot of stress, a lot of relief. Was there any guilt?
Not at the time, no.
Not at that time. Okay.
No.
So
that came much later.
That came later. So you did it once. And it was funny. I was a couple of weeks ago, watched this show. I almost got away with it. Someone was watching it and I was watching them with them, and it was really interesting. But there was a man that robbed a bank, and he was like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe he did it." Yeah. That was going to be that one time, but then, continued. So tell me then, after you did it, was there like, I got to do this again because it was this adrenaline rush going on in my body?
No, that's what everyone has told me from the outside, and no, that was not it. What it was, like I said, I thought I was done with it. I felt a huge psychological relief. I was like, okay, I got the money. I can move ahead with my company. I'm good to go. And like, it was about 3 months later where I started thinking, that was a lot of money for a little bit of work.
Well, how much did you get?
I'm not going to say.
Okay, right. Don't say that. Yeah. Okay. So you think, okay, it was quick, got the money that I needed. And then, so let me ask you a question then before you even move on to this one. So when you walked in and you robbed the bank, did you have any feelings about how the teller was experiencing, what you did in that moment?
No, I got that when I was talking to my lawyer many years later, when I was looking at 60 years in the federal penitentiary.
Got it.
And there's something called an allocution, which is the the speech that the inmate or the person being sentenced is allowed to say to the judge and or the judge and the jury.
Okay.
And like you said there, like I didn't have much guilt or remorse leading up to it, and certainly not in the moment. And she asked the exact same question you did. She said, did you even think about what the tellers thought? Like that they thought maybe they wouldn't live to see their children that afternoon.
Yeah.
Like you didn't have a gun, but anyone crazy enough to come into a bank and demand money is, has something not all right upstairs. And that's a high risk situation for everyone. So, there's an edge of terror to that. And my lawyer was a very smart woman, and she really made me own up to that.
Okay.
And it hurt, because I felt like I'm Robin Hood. I'm just like I'm going to rob the bank. I'm going to give like much more than 10% to the church and to the people and charitable causes. Like I'm good. I'm a hero of the people. And she was like, you're violating the civil code, and you're actually you're hurting people, like the tellers, to your point. And I really started to think about that, and some of the looks on their faces, what, and I can have, I do, and obtained empathy for that situation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So this took a little bit of time for you.
It took a lot of time.
A lot of time.
Yeah. It took me looking at, like I said, a 60-year sentence, which for me, I'm over 50 years old. So that would have been life for me.
Got it. So let's go back to the 3 months then. So 3 months, you thought, all right, a lot of money in a short period of time. Let's do it again. Is that where you were? So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I just really started to think about, like I said, it was very high stress, but it was also very little time. A bank robbery takes less than 3 minutes. If you add up all the, everything else around it, maybe it takes a day, right? Okay. But it just seemed, and so it kept bothering me and planning in my head. And then before I knew it, boom.
Okay. Was it the same bank, or you just did a different bank? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So
after I robbed a bank, I would feel I didn't want to be within 20 miles of that place ever again.
Okay.
Because I felt like just it was a karma thing, and also like people would be looking for me, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So did you ever think that in that moment after the second one, that maybe somebody would see something, know something, and, come and, the police would come get you?
No, I didn't think that for a long time. Although at some point, I just, like my sixth sense was tingling. And that's the only way I can describe it. And I started to feel like I was being followed and feel like I was being tracked. And it Beverly, like, I want to say, like, there was a mental illness component to this.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I have been diagnosed bipolar. So there's a part of, actually robbing a bank is an extremely manic activity. Like you have to, it's kind of like going into combat because you don't know what's going to be in that bank. You don't know if there's going to be a guard with a gun or like in Texas, just a person with a concealed carry permit who decides that it's his day to be a hero. So it's a dangerous situation on all sides. And it was very high stress. So, but I started to feel that I was being tracked, and I actually got validated once I got into prison, because you get what's called your discovery, which is like this stack of more than 1,000 pages of all the documentation that the cops and the FBI has built on you as they built their case and tracked you. And I found out that they knew where I lived, and they had staked out my residence And they were like parking, because I was parking like a quarter mile from my house because I was so paranoid, and like
Okay.
walking through the woods to my back door. But
So
they
they
knew
saw
where
that. I was like,
I
why is he doing that? Why is he
was.
parking so far from his house, going all around to even? So that again, that's probably so suspicious for them.
I don't know, but I mean, they had my place staked out, so my paranoia was accurate.
Yeah, yeah.
But it did not feel good. Like
Right.
in fact, there was a part of like when I robbed a bank, I felt like this, like a wolf, like a lone wolf, like I was powerful, and like
Mhm.
I command things, and money would be thrown at me, and it was a somewhat validating feeling. And when I started to feel the heat on me, it was the flip of that. I was like, oh yeah, I'm a lone wolf, and there's a small army of people with sniper rifles and
Mhm.
scopes who are tracking me through, everywhere
Yeah,
I go. And I
yeah,
knew it was coming. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That could be a very difficult place to be when you're dealing with, mental health issues, and then you're dealing with the paranoia on top of it, and then just never know, I guess, in terms of when you're going to be caught. I'm sure that was in the back of your mind. So how
Yeah.
many banks did you actually rob before you finally got caught?
I got caught for 3.
Three. Okay.
I,
Wow. Okay. So did they?
I would like to talk about, if it's okay, and I think it's like
Sure.
aligned with your podcast.
Yeah.
We could go into a lot about the criminal adventure side. What I needed was what happened to me in prison, which is I was not a religious person.
Mhm.
In fact, I before I got into prison, I was actually worshiping Satan. like like I
Got
had
it.
tried other things,
Yeah.
and like Hinduism and Buddhism and all kinds of faith practices, and nothing worked for me. So in a desperation, I was like robbing banks and worshiping Satan,
Mm,
and, and
got
so
it.
that was the where I got into. That's when the FBI caught up with me, and the first thing that happened when I was incarcerated was it couldn't have been like 3 days in,
Mhm.
and they said, Roberts, you got mail. And it was like this amazing book, which you
The
might have heard
Bible.
of.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was leather bound, which was
Yeah.
unheard of in a
Hmm.
jail. And they gave it to me, and $100 on my books. And that was the mother of my children. She had found out that I was incarcerated and immediately sent a Bible to me and
Oh,
immediately put 100 on my books. And it just like exploded my heart.
oh, wow.
It was
Mhm.
literally a life-saving gift.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, was she a Christian while you were married to each other?
100%. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So she was
She,
like attending church, very much into her faith, but then you weren't at that time?
yeah, I'd say that's an accurate statement. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you look back then, do you feel like, you were searching for something and trying to find it through the external? Because oftentimes researching is really the searching that we're looking for. It usually comes from within, not from without. So when did that revelation finally come, and how did it come? Is it through the Bible?
Well, yes, I would agree with your statement 100%, Beverly. Like, I, when I look back on it, so much of this, like reprocessing and looking backward, I'm
Yeah.
like, I can see different sides of it, like why it
Mhm.
happened. That wasn't at all apparent in the moment. But
Mhm.
I was just having a huge temper tantrum on the world.
Mm.
Like,
Mhm.
I was business wise successful, you might say family successful, and it just wasn't clicking for me. And I think that's because I didn't have God.
Yeah.
So yeah, how that came to me was I I had 5 failed escape attempts from the jail.
Ah,
Um,
okay.
and after the last of those, they put me in solitary almost permanently.
Ooh, that's
Yeah.
hard.
Well, it was hard and it was great because I didn't have to deal with a cellie. I also was trapped in my cell, but they allowed us 2 books in solitary. They allowed us a Bible and a dictionary.
Mm. Oh, okay.
And you're on 47 and a half hour lockdown. We get out of our cells for half an hour every 2 days to take a shower and maybe make a phone call if we're lucky. So for 47 and a half hours, I was in my cell all alone with a Bible and a dictionary. So what I do?
Read the Bible.
I read it. And it was a study Bible. So it had like all these extra tidbits and things, like giving context and explain both like historically and more importantly, like metaphorically, saying like, this is how it could apply to your modern life, even though this is about the Jews 8,000 years ago. And at the start, I just did it because I was bored. But the more I thought about it, it was like one of the most genius gifts ever because the faith worked into my heart.
Yeah.
And I think it was about a year, about 13 months in, still in solitary. And I was helping other people out. I was actually preaching on the tier. So like every night I did a sermon around 7:00, even though I still wasn't really a Christian.
Okay.
It was just something to do, and I was fascinated with the book, and I was really vibing with the message of Jesus.
Wow. Okay.
His whole thing about surrender, about servant, being a servant king, and just his grace and his unabashed love just like really spoke to me. So I was preaching to the tier every night. And September rolls around, September 2019, and all my friends are at this event called Burning Man in the desert. It's like a huge party, and I'm in my cell reading the Bible. And it's a time for rebirth. And I was reading a book called Purpose-Driven Life by Rick Warren.
Yes, I know that book.
Yeah, and I think it was chapter 5, and he's like, if you haven't yet, it's time to accept Jesus and invite Jesus into your heart.
Okay.
And I was scared because it involved surrender, and surrender to me was a word of weakness. Mm-hmm. And I was like a person who I'm never surrendering.
Right. A lot of people think that surrender is a place of weakness versus strength.
And it can be in a fight or something, right? Mm-hmm. This fight, though, was with God, who's the wrong person to pick a fight with.
Yeah.
And so my logic was, I'm like, I'm in my cell all alone. I'm making a private pact with my heart and with Jesus, or my idea of Jesus. Like, it's going to be okay. I've tried everything else. I tried Hinduism, Buddhism, Satanism, and nothing worked. You know what? In fact, it did worse than not work. It landed me in a solitary cell in Reno, Nevada, looking at 60 years. So,
wow. Wait a minute. So how many years were you supposed to have?
Well, 60 was the maximum sentence. It was that's three 20-year bids on the federal schedule for bank robbery.
Wow.
And yes, and I had the lawyers appointed to me by the government. They're called federal public defenders.
Okay.
They were some of the best. They were sent by God.
Wow.
They were very skilled. Yeah.
Okay. So while you were in prison, were you already sentenced, or you were just waiting to be sentenced?
So I was in jail for about 18 months before I got actually sentenced. And two of those robberies were in two separate. One was in California and one was in Nevada. So I had to go to trial in two separate states. And they wouldn't combine them. So it was a little tricky. And I was actually planning on taking it to trial, declaring my innocence, and then screaming at the judge about how smart and genius bank robbers were and how there's more of them in the world. Like that's how it's still no. Yes.
They would have definitely given you 60 years.
Exactly. Yes. It would have been a disaster.
Yeah.
So that day in September, I invited Jesus into my heart. I did. I made that request. Mm-hmm. And I put my head down, and I tried to channel my heart energy and really be authentic and serious. Yeah. And at that time, if I visualized my heart, if I thought about what was in there, I used to think it was like little piece of black, like diamond. Like it was like this little black shiny rock that, couldn't be penetrated and couldn't be hurt.
Yeah.
And in that moment, that black diamond just went and it totally exploded. And like this new red, bloody, beating heart, like just, like the Holy Spirit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was ecstatic. And I just felt suddenly like instead of doing everything myself, like I had somebody on my side, like God was on my side and Jesus was there with me and everything was going to be okay.
Wow.
Yeah. And I felt happy for the first time in a long time.
Wow.
Like authentically happy. And I thought the irony of it because I was taking all these things, taking money, doing drugs and sex and strip clubs and things, and it wasn't really bringing me happy. It was like little peaks of ecstasy, but I just kept chasing more and more and more. Yeah. And when Jesus came into my heart and I got that new heart and got really born again, it was like the opposite of that. Because what I asked was, God, what can I do for you to advance your mission in the world? And being that servant, it made me feel liberated.
Wow. That is so powerful. So you're in that cell, you say this prayer, you accept Christ into your heart, and you feel this renewed life, I guess. And so after all of that, then what did you do next?
I danced and cried for about 3 days straight. I didn't even sleep much. I was just dancing. I was like, hallelujah, praise the Lord. I was like a happy idiot in my cell. I really felt like it was my birthday. Like it was day one of new life. And I pretty much immediately called my lawyers and was like, look, we're not going to trial. Like, get me a deal. Like the Bible says, respect authority because God put authority in place. I did that bank robbery. Let's be clear about it. I'm ready to make a deal. Let's go. And it all went good from there.
Well, it's interesting. What did your lawyers say? Did they think you just what they probably said, what the heck happened? What changed? Did you tell them?
Well, actually, they said when I had the meeting with them, they said, thank God. Because we were going to defend you as well as we could, but you were headed for a train wreck, son.
Oh my gosh, that is amazing. That's amazing. So you finally, go to trial, and then what happened?
So I didn't go to trial because I entered a plea of guilty.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Yeah. And I didn't know this, but the judge in federal trial, the judge still has full discretion.
Okay.
So we went there to the set. We had negotiated the deal with the prosecutor for I think like a 6-year sentence or something.
Okay.
And we went in front of the judge, and he was an old, angry Southern man. I think his name was Jackson.
Okay.
And he yelled at me for like 5 minutes. And he basically he said, I should give you 20 years. You had all things going for you. You had businesses, a happy family, and you just, went off the rails. You didn't even have a good excuse. Like you weren't destitute and poor or on welfare. Like,
true.
Like I should just give you 20 years and I'm allowed to. And I promise you would lose in a court of appeals. And I'm watching this like he's going to give me 20 years. Yeah. Oh my God. And at the end he goes, and I pronounce the sentence 5.5 years. Boom, slams the gavel and walks out. And
wow.
I didn't even know what happened. It happened so fast. Yeah. And I looked at my lawyer. I said, "What just happened? Like, what did he give? What was that? 20 years or what happened?"
The lawyer probably said, "It's a miracle."
Yeah, she said, "You got blessed." Like, wow. I thanked God and thanked my lawyers, and and that was a day of celebration.
Yeah. So did you
Yeah.
spend the entire 5.5 years in prison?
I did, yes.
Okay.
In the feds, so in state cases, you typically do half a sentence, or sometimes even a quarter, or sometimes even less on good behavior. They'll release you
Okay.
on probation or parole.
Hmm.
A federal sentence, you serve a minimum of 83% of your sentence.
Okay.
So essentially, on an 11-year sentence, you do 10, or like on mine, a 6-year
Yeah.
sentence, you do 5.5. And
Got it.
there's no they don't mess around. Like
Got
whatever your
it.
sentence is, you're serving it.
Got it. So what was it like for you in prison, especially with this new born again life?
It was one of the wildest adventures I've ever had. It was so because of all my escape attempts.
Oh no.
The last escape attempt, I kicked out the door on the U.S. Marshals SUV,
Oh dear.
and that was where they drew the line. They were like, you know what, Roberts, like we were going to put you in a camp, but you're going to the pen. so, so they put me in a level 5 max penitentiary in Beaumont, Texas, and I was there with. I mean, it was a lot of people were doing life. There was a lot of cartel members. I mean, it was the most serious criminals that you can imagine.
Right.
And I was certainly out of my depth in some ways, because I wasn't used to dealing with those people or the gangs or anything like that. So it was an adventure of the oddest sort. I kind of felt like we were on a lunar colony or something, because the one thing about prison is no one leaves the walls. It's a city of 1,200 people
Okay.
that learns to live together. Uh, and I continued my Bible studies, and we had Bible groups and things, and that certainly helped getting through. And even though it's like warfare in prison between the gangs, and the Christians are certainly a minority. There's a lot of criminals for life in there who, even though they're going to get released, they know they're going to keep doing crimes, and they know they're going to come back to prison. Like
Yeah.
it's just,
Yeah.
that's their life, and they've chosen it. I did not choose that. Was determined to correct my mistakes
Okay.
and to come out a different person than I went in.
Okay.
So, yeah, I continued to study the Bible and meditate on it and try and embody it. And I guess most importantly, it gave me a real empathy for my family and my children.
Yeah.
And while I was having an adventure in prison, they were actually suffering, because when you get incarcerated, it's like being kidnapped. You know, you just disappear.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't in their lives actively. And I had like 7 people. I had a phone call every other day. I mean, even when you're on the open tier, like you line up for the phones, and there's 128 men and there's only 3 phones. So,
Wow.
so you basically get a call like every other day, or you can buy other people's calls, but they're expensive.
Yeah.
So I had a rotation. I call my daughter, I call my son, I call my dad, I call my brother. Sometimes I call my best friend. Sometimes and then I call my fiance at the time,
Yeah.
and then and so I just rotated through these. Oh, and I called the mother of my children.
Yeah.
So I rotated through those, but that would be like one call every 10 days, for each of my kids.
Wow.
And yeah,
How old were your kids?
they were in their teens.
Oh, they were teenagers. Okay.
Yeah, so this was like between ages like 14 to 20.
Got it.
Yeah.
Were you able to see them at all, or any of your support system?
This was COVID.
Oh no. That's
Yeah.
right.
So there was, I had these ideas of like, oh, they're gonna come fly out and visit me all the time, and this, that, and the other.
Oh,
We had,
wow.
I got one visit with my children. It was actually March 2020, right before COVID.
Shit. Oh,
Like
wow.
we all saw it coming. We were like, something weird's going down in New York. People are dying in Washington State at some old people's home. Like this could be.
Oh, dear.
And so I got to see both my kids. They visited me in Santa Ana, California, when I was still awaiting sentencing. And it was a great visit. I mean, it was through the glass, on
Yeah,
a
yeah.
phone, so we didn't get to hug or anything, but I got to see their faces and they got to see me, and it was very sweet.
Okay.
Yeah. Other than that, it was just phone calls and letters. And my God, Beverly, I wrote letters. Some of my letters never even got opened. Because
Oh, you wrote almost every day.
oh yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Did you get some back as well from family
yeah,
members? You did? That's good.
yeah.
Like a
Very
little
few people
lifeline.
wrote me, but I did get a lot of. There's a thing called Post, which allows you to send. It's like you text pictures on your phone.
Mm-hmm.
Like the way we get text in prison
Yeah.
is Post prints out postcards of photographs and mails them to inmates. So we get,
Okay.
yeah, and that was a treat. Yeah,
Yeah.
I would look through my photos every single day, like just, my
Yeah.
window to the free world.
Yeah. So that's what gave you hope.
Yeah, yeah. I spent a lot of my time planning what I was going to do when I got out.
Wow. Wow. And then when you finally did get out and you saw your children, your family members, I don't know if you still had the fiance, then what was that like for you?
It was getting out of prison was absolutely one of the highlights of my life. Um, I I felt like just top of the world. I've been contained. We were in lockdown for well over half my bid. So because of COVID and Beaumont has a lot of security issues, like people get stabbed all the time, and every time somebody gets stabbed, you're in lockdown for another 14 to 30 days.
Wow.
So we were just in our cells for
Wow.
the vast majority of my sentence. Uh, and then all of a sudden, I had a bus ticket to California and no cops and no handcuffs. I had not been outside those walls without full shackles, like leg irons and waist and black box on my wrist
Yeah.
for 6 years. And I was like, and ironically or bizarrely, I got dropped off in Anaheim, California, and I had to walk past Disneyland on the way to my halfway house.
Oh my goodness.
So I was just seeing all these people in mouse ears on vacation, and I'm still in my prison clothes. I'm still in like
Oh,
my t-shirt, and because you have nothing in prison. So I have my t-shirt and
oh
my
my goodness.
shorts and my white sneakers, and I'm just walking by, seeing all
Wow,
these
I've never thought of
vacationers.
that. They wouldn't give you something else to wear.
In some of the camps and jails, they'll give you like Salvation Army stuff. In prison, it's just what you got.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So when you saw your kids, was it the kids and you were visiting in California?
Yeah, eventually everyone came to visit me. I
Oh,
was in
okay.
a halfway house,
Yeah.
so it's kind of a controlled environment. The door's not locked,
Right.
but no one's really allowed in, and you're only allowed out on. I had to like build my freedom up there.
Yeah.
That was a blessing too. Like I feel like it would have been a train wreck just going straight out into the free.
Mhm.
The halfway house gave me discipline.
Got it. So
Uh,
Robert, so you were out what year?
2022.
22. Okay, got it. Okay. So since you've been through all the experience that you've been through, and it's been different, interesting, challenging. At one time, you thought it was exhilarating until you got through this process and have to deal with being in prison. What are some of the lessons that you've learned?
Okay, the first lesson is that I feel that the only two things that really matter in the world are your relationship with God and your
Mm.
relationship with loved ones.
Yeah.
And like Jesus said, like one of my favorite quotes is he was he was like, there's only two commandments. The first is love God, and the second is love your neighbor.
Yeah.
And then he gave the lesson of the Good Samaritan, like who's your neighbor? Every single human on earth.
Yeah.
So that's like that love thing. And I'm not sure if any of us are capable of loving 8 billion people, but it's a concept, and just treating other people with love and respect and dignity. That before prison, I was absolutely putting money, drugs, and sex ahead of relationships and people,
Yeah.
and I most certainly suffered the consequences in many ways. And in prison, even in prison, you're like, the people you run with are the people who are going to be ride or die. That's, whether you're going to live or die your prison experience. And the people I talked to on the phone, my 7 people, that was my lifeline. Like, I closed my eyes on the phone and imagine what it was like to be in the free world.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of not even doubled down, but like 100x'd how I relate, just the quality of my relationships with other human beings, and trying to be face to face as much as possible, like in the same room with them. Because the phone was, it was like torture.
Okay.
You're like, la, la, la. But you want to like hug the person, right?
Right. You want that physical connection.
Yeah. So I get outdoors as much as I can. I be in front with people, and I always, this took me a long time in prison, but in prison you're impotent, so you need things. Like, you need money on your books for commissary. You think you need a book sent to you just to keep you amused, or a picture or something. And so you're kind of demanding things on the phone, or asking directly.
Right.
And this again was part of kind of my coming to Jesus. After that happened, I was like, oh my God, I've just been an asshole, like with my whole family. I've just been asking for stuff while I'm not even there for them.
Yeah.
And I started asking them on the phone, like, what can I do for you? I know I'm in prison, but if there's anything I can do, I got you. And it was this shock.
Yeah.
They were like, what? Like, is this the Greg Roberts that we know? Who is this?
But what do they say? Needed.
Sometimes it was like, like my daughter needed something for college, and so I had a bank account on the outside.
Got it.
So I'd like wire her some money. Sometimes it was just, talking to someone on their behalf. Sometimes it was, a lot of people wanted me to make tattoo designs for them. So I had a lot of spare time. I'm a good artist, so I designed a lot of tattoos.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so good to be able to have that revelation that when you're in prison, you're thinking that you need from others because you feel like, you don't have a whole lot of control. But then to have that revelation that, what, even here, I can do something in giving back.
100%. Yes. Yes.
I like that. Yeah. So any other lessons learned?
Physical fitness is paramount.
Oh, you worked out a lot while you're there?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. One of my cellies told me, is like, we better leave this place like totally ripped because we have no excuse not to be. Like, we're fed, our bills are paid. Like, what do we have to do but read and work out and play chess? So we better like push it, and we did.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
And honest, like I said, I just again, being in lockdown for so long.
Yeah.
I cherish sunlight, like just being in the sun. I just try and like experience fresh, clean air and sun on my face for at least an hour a day.
Got it.
Yeah.
So, Greg, how did you manage the mental health component? And even before, were you taking your meds for bipolar disorder before? Did you do it in prison? Did you wait till you got out? Like, how did you manage that?
I had tried lithium for the bipolar. I'm also a triathlete.
Okay.
Used to train for half Ironmans and marathons, and it was really hurting my performance. Like, I could normally kick like an 8-minute mile, and on lithium my miles were like 9:30s. I mean, that's just, and it was unacceptable to me. And also just made me feel like nothing was bad anymore, but nothing was really great either. Because my life was like this.
Yeah.
And lithium, it was like,
yeah.
And it was like boring.
Yeah.
So I kicked off the lithium in like 90 days. When I got into prison, my escape attempts were problematic for everyone. The guards didn't like me for that, and it got me beat up a few times and by the guards.
Yeah.
And so I was on some meds there. And the day that I got Jesus in my heart, he lifted that burden from me.
Oh, so you got healed of your bipolar
I do
disorder?
feel that, yes.
Wow. So
Yes.
you haven't been
And
able, you didn't take any meds?
I
You didn't take
stopped meds that day.
any
In
meds?
fact,
Wow. Mhm.
I accepted the med and I brought him and I cheeked it and I spit in my sink and I had this guilty thing. So I actually called the guard and I was like, here's my med back. And he's like, what are you doing? I was like, here's the med back. And he's like, great, we're shaking down your cell, man. Like, and they cuffed me and put me in the nasty little retaining place and they destroyed my cell because they were just mad. But was my way of like ending the meds.
Okay. Well, at least you were honest about it.
Yeah, that might have not been the wisest decision, but
I know.
it made an impression on me. I was like, okay, I'm definitely not doing meds again. And I've been good without meds. I mean, I
You've been
still
good.
have, like I think most people, emotional highs and lows,
Yeah.
and I have just come to accept that, when I'm feeling depressed, it's not forever. It may last a minute, it may last an hour, it may last a day, it may even last like 5 days, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna get out of it. So just keep putting one foot in front of the other.
Yeah. Did you also receive counseling?
No.
No.
You mean in prison?
Yeah. In
They
prison.
have services in prison. They have
I'm sure I
education.
did.
And none of, I mean, at least where I was at, those were a joke. Yeah.
Okay. So you really just the having that relationship with God, just really being in a place of surrender and allowing yourself really just to be led by him is what allowed you to be able to heal.
For sure. It was immediate. It was
Yeah.
like just like my heart exploded.
Yeah.
I just felt that curse, for lack of a better word, like lift off my shoulders.
Yeah. I love that. Love that. So just in terms of, this is called Your Love Talk.
Yes.
And it's really about when we go through challenges in life, not to give up, we can get to the other side. And oftentimes we need to really look within to affirm ourselves, especially when we are challenged. So we won't go back to the life that we had. So what do you tell yourself to keep going?
I have a gratitude journal that I won't say I do it every day, but I fill that out and it just kind of flips the script. If I'm ever even feeling, oh man, like I'm having a hard time, I look around me at all my blessings,
Yeah.
the people who love me and how God's provided for me and given me a certain degree of providence and abundance. And and that I'm not in prison.
Yeah.
And I feel like I have my whole life ahead. Like this is life 2.0. I hit the
Yes.
50-year mark. It was a wild ride up till then. I did some good things and some bad things, and now it's all good. I mean, as far as my actions in the world, like I feel so. Um, and to the point of your podcast, and the Bible, there's a whole dialogue that Jesus and the disciples give about the contrast of love and fear.
Yeah.
And I truly believe that. Like fear kills life and love makes life. And you have to, and everyone has their fears. And I'm all about like running into your fear and just like crushing it and destroying it. And the best way to do that is just to tell another person that you love them, and be sincere about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah.
Okay.
And then prove it by asking them what you can do for them.
Yeah. It's really also by your actions, right? Not just to the
100%.
yeah.
Yeah. But wow, works not words,
Without
right?
faith. What
Yeah.
works without faith is dead. Yeah. Love that one. So you are now embarking, maybe you embarked already on a podcast called Pirate Soldier King. Tell us a little bit about that.
Thank you. Yeah. Pirate Soldier King is actually, it started out as a book.
Ah, nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the whole story of my life, essentially, or the later part of my life, from crime to prison to finding Jesus and like to be continued, because it's my present life, and walking that path of redemption, which is an ongoing path. It's nowhere near there.
Right. Right.
And so Pirate Soldier King is my podcast, like Love Talk is yours, and we pretty much just talk about mostly the prison part, but mostly the lessons learned from there, and then how they apply to people in the free and living your daily lives. Because there's a lot of hard truths in there that I certainly found valuable, both faith wise and just in a relationship wise.
Okay. Nice. So where do people find you?
You can go to piratesoldierking.com. That's probably the best way, and that has links to the book, to the audio podcast, to the we do videos as well, just like this.
Yeah.
Piratesoldierking.com, and that's on all the socials too, like at Pirate Soldier King, Instagram, all that.
Got it. Well, Gregory, thank you so much for sharing your story and just sharing the lessons learned and even how you got to that place, but how you turned your life around and how you are living life with purpose and with empathy for others and just love for God, yourself, and other people. So thank you for being here and sharing your story.
Beverly, you're welcome. And thank you so much for inviting me. This is like a real treat, and I love your show, and I love your energy.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm honored. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Gregory, for your vulnerability in sharing your transformative story. You are a reminder that no matter what you have done, you can turn your life around and use your testimony to help others. Continue to share your message through your book and podcast, Pirate Soldier King. I will leave you with 2 affirmations from my Love Talk affirmation card deck. The first is, I choose to get on the right path when I am on the wrong one. And the second is, I forgive my wrongdoings as an act of self-love. Please remember to visit yourlovetalk.com to purchase the Love Talk affirmation and couples card decks and my book, Mended, Healing Your Heart After a Broken Relationship. To follow me on Instagram or Facebook, please visit Dr. Beverly Booth. If you have enjoyed this episode, please remember to like, subscribe, and share it with your family and friends. Thank you for tuning into this episode today. This is Dr. Beverly from Your Love Talk. Blessings.